tasked with carrying out that plan they just heard about. Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly are on their first joint trip today to the border. Just a short time ago, they joined us exclusively on the first 100 days from El Paso, Texas. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Great to have you with us on the first 100 days tonight. Let's jump right in because there's a lot to get to. So, Secretary Kelly, your thoughts as you go down to the border there together today. How much of the changes that we just heard about have actually been implemented?
Well, we're still working on across a broad range of things, Martha, but just to highlight something, just in the last 60, 90 days, the movement of illegal immigrants up from Central America through Mexico has dropped off 70%. We're at about a 15, 16-year low, and frankly, we haven't done all that much yet. There's a fair amount of what I would call fencing here between the border. It's very, very effective. The men and women that work the border, CVP and ICE and others, find it remarkably effective in keeping down the amount of illegal movement across the two borders.
Let me stay with you for a second, Secretary Kelly, because you bring up the fencing. The wall was a promise that was made by the president. At one point, you said it was going to get started in the first couple of months. When will it begin?
Well, we've got requests out for proposals. I think something in the neighborhood of 100 companies from across the nation have shown interest and are starting to put together their prototypes. The expectation, my expectation, and of course, contracting is a pretty complicated business in the federal government, unfortunately, too complicated. But I think by late spring, early summer, we'll have some prototypes, and then we'll be able to move forward into the summer. So we won't be able to do it all in one afternoon. That is, build a wall and physical barrier, see-through wall, depending on the conditions. But we're going to get at it as quick as we can.
All right. Attorney General Sessions, this week there were stories about possible differences of tactics or different ways of approaching this issue between you and Secretary Kelly. You've taken a very hard line, just telling people, look, do not come. We don't want you to cross the border. It's not safe for you to cross the border. Secretary Kelly has characterized them as the majority of people who come over as good people from Central America. Do you take issue with that characterization?
No, most of the people are coming here for personal reasons, and they're not criminals, but we do have, unfortunately, a number of criminal elements involved. We have international cartels, MS-13, headquartered in El Salvador, and now maybe 10,000 in the United States. One of perhaps the most violent gang we've ever had in the United States. So, no, I don't think we have any disagreement at all about that. I'm here basically to congratulate him, his Border Patrol, his ICE officers, for the fabulous work they've done. And really the biggest part of this credit goes to President Trump. It's his message that this border is no longer open. If you want to come to America, apply, do it lawfully. We admit 1.1 million people a year to lawful permanent status in America. So let's don't do it illegally, let's do it legally, and we're going to get this thing done. And I think it's quite a thing to celebrate this much progress in first 100 days.
All right, Secretary Kelly, let's talk about DACA, because a big story this week, Juan Montez, 23 years old, deported from this country. He's covered by DACA until 2018. So why was he deported?
Well, he wasn't DACA anymore because of his behavior. He had multiple brushes with the law, one conviction for larceny. He left the country and then returned illegally. So he takes himself by his actions off the DACA list. So when he was taken into custody and deported, he was no longer covered by DACA.
So the people who support him, let me just ask you one quick question. They say, you know, he's the sole supporter for his family, that he claims he was eating in a restaurant in California and was picked up by agents and tossed back over the border. You don't agree with those? You think those are false assertions?
They're absolutely false assertions. I mean, you would expect someone that was here under the DACA rules to be extra special cautious in terms of getting crosswise with our laws. He didn't, so he's gone.
Attorney General Sessions, in terms of DACA in the broad picture, does it change under this administration? Are you going to continue to honor DACA, or should people expect that it will not be honored?
You know, I've made my position clear over the years, actually, as to the legality of President's order. One of the orders has already been struck down. But look, what we've got to do and what the general has to do is to deploy his resources at the most important areas. And as you heard President Trump say, we're focusing on criminal people that are here, people who've gotten into violation of the law and who've otherwise present a threat to the United States. That's who we're focusing on now.
All right. So in other words, people who are here undocumented, but who are not breaking a law besides that, can they expect to be untouched?
Well, what I would say the only thing I can say is what the law says. If you enter this country unlawfully, you're subject to being deported. General Kelly and our prosecutors will be focusing on the top priorities first. That's what we're going to do.
I do want to ask you about MS-13, which you brought up a moment ago. This is a scourge in this nation, and it has brought the kind of crime that we used to think was relegated to drug cartels south of the border to places like Los Angeles and Long Island. We've seen beheadings, we've seen gang rapes. Why did we not, General Kelly, hear about this more? We've heard about it, but not to the extent that you all are taking it on now in the prior administration.
Martha, I would just tell you that this administration is willing to take on these hard issues. This administration is not willing to kick these problems down the road to the next president. We're taking them on right now. That's what President Trump told us to do. The only thing I can surmise in the past, and as you know, I think I was on duty in Southern Command for 39 months, more or less, prior to taking this job. I knew what was going on. I was always astounded why people in the United States weren't talking about it, but I was pretty busy intercepting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tons of drugs as it moved up into Mexico. Yeah. I don't know why they didn't talk about it. We are.
Yeah, and no doubt that's one of the many reasons that you were chosen for your job, Secretary, and we thank you for that service. You know, in terms of MS-13, in terms of the legal side of it, Attorney General Sessions, how you've talked about this in battle terms, that this is the beachhead to go against them. How do you do that? How do you kick out the people who are here, track them down, and sort of put a cork in this problem?
Good question. What we're doing is we're telling our federal investigators to go after these individuals when they have evidence about somebody connected to the MS-13. Let's go after them, attack their money laundering and their violence and their prostitution and their killing. And if we do that regularly and consistently, we can do what we have done before. We've stopped the Colombian cartels. We actually damaged MS-13 a number of years ago, and it's come back, and so we can damage it again. Our goal is to destroy this, to dismantle it. That's what President Trump gave us, an executive order to dismantle these international criminal organizations, and we're going to do that. We're going to prosecute them, we're going to investigate them, and we're going to deport them after that. So that's the right thing to do. I believe we'll be successful. It's going to be a top priority of this government. You can be sure of it.
Attorney General, another quick question for you. The Judge Curiel, who was overseeing the case that we talked about a moment ago with Mr. Montez, is someone that had a bit of a run-in with President Trump because he was overseeing Trump University case during the course of the election. Do you think this judge can be fair in this case?
Well, I expect so. The lawyers who know a lot more about it than I would file for recusal if necessary. But I go into a courtroom assuming that you'll get a fair hearing, and if there's proof otherwise, a motion can be filed.
All right, and just one other comment from you, if you can, Attorney General Sessions, about a comment that you made earlier on a radio show with regard to the extreme vetting, which has been shot down by a Hawaii judge. You said, "I'm amazed that a judge sitting on an island in the Pacific can issue an order that stops the President of the United States from what appears to be clearly his statutory and constitutional power." That's getting some pushback in a number of venues in the media today. Do you want to clarify that statement at all?
Well, Hawaii is a beautiful island. We got about 800 federal judges. One, protected perhaps by the Ninth Circuit, is stopped on executive order by the President of the United States that I believe is constitutional and that I believe is explicitly approved by statutory law. So, but the process will go forward. Appeals will be held.
All right.